2013, where infidelity rocked the core of the family. It's all on you, Teddy.
Listen, imagine finding out that the woman you trusted like blood and the man you built a life with were quietly hiding a child from you the entire time. No build-up. No honesty. Just a sudden live stream and a piece of paperwork that flips your reality upside down. Because that's the storm people believe just hit Tina Campbell. And this isn't just drama. This feels like total destruction. We're talking about a relationship that already seemed fragile, now spiraling into something far more disturbing. Because according to what's being whispered, Teddy Campbell didn't just step outside the marriage. He allegedly crossed into territory no one even imagined, with her own sister, Erica Campbell. And right when you think that's the lowest it could go, it drops even further. Because now this isn't just about betrayal between two people. There are claims of a pregnancy, a hidden child, and supposed proof that Tina herself is now exposing to the world. But here's the part that's making everyone pause. This didn't just appear out of nowhere. People are digging through past interviews, resurfacing old clips, rewatching moments that once felt normal, now questioning if something deeper was always there, concealed in plain sight, while audiences applauded and believed everything was fine. And this is where things take an even darker turn. Because if what Tina revealed holds up, if that document truly says what people believe it says, then this isn't just a scandal. This is a complete unraveling of a family. Now the internet is divided. Some refuse to believe it's real. Others are saying it connects too many dots to ignore. And the silence from everyone involved, it's only making the noise louder. So now the real question becomes, was this a hidden truth finally breaking through? Or just the beginning of something even more explosive?
Kid, I filtered everything through it. Everything. So when loneliness showed up in my marriage, I went back to the old Ted.
Wow.
That's exactly how
The broadcast didn't erupt into madness. IT opened with restraint. A still frame. A measured inhale. And then Tina Campbell stepped into view, already shaken, already holding something weighty enough to bend the entire story in a new direction. Viewers braced for emotion. They weren't prepared for proof. Because the second she hinted she had something to reveal, everything shifted. No theatrics. No raised voice. Just intention. And that's what made it feel disturbing. This wasn't a raw reaction. This was someone who had already lived through it and chose this moment to unveil it. And when she raised that paper, everything froze. No soundtrack. No scrolling comments keeping pace. Just one claim that struck harder than anything she'd said up to that point. A pregnancy document. Not gossip. Not whispers. Something tangible. Something she could present directly to the lens. And the instant that image filled the screen, the situation exploded past anything the audience thought they were about to witness. Because now, this wasn't just about a broken bond. This was about evidence. According to her claims, Teddy Campbell and Erica Campbell weren't just entangled emotionally. It had crossed another boundary, far beyond, to a place where the outcome wasn't secret feelings or hidden texts, but something real. A child. And that one revelation changed everything. Because affairs can be rejected. Rumors can be brushed off. But a child? That's irreversible. That's something that lingers long after the headlines die. The broadcast didn't erupt into madness. IT opened with restraint. A still frame. A measured inhale. And then Tina Campbell stepped into view, already shaken, already holding something weighty enough to bend the entire story in a new direction. Viewers braced for emotion. They weren't prepared for proof. Because the second she hinted she had something to reveal, everything shifted. No theatrics. No raised voice. Just intention. And that's what made it feel disturbing. This wasn't a raw reaction. This was someone who had already lived through it and chose this moment to unveil it. And when she raised that paper, everything froze. No soundtrack. No scrolling comments keeping pace. Just one claim that struck harder than anything she'd said up to that point. A pregnancy document. Not gossip. Not whispers. Something tangible. Something she could present directly to the lens. And the instant that image filled the screen, the situation exploded past anything the audience thought they were about to witness. Because now this wasn't just about a broken bond. This was about evidence. According to her claims, Teddy Campbell and Erica Campbell weren't just entangled emotionally. It had crossed another boundary. Far beyond, to a place where the outcome wasn't secret feelings or hidden texts, but something real. A child. And that one revelation changed everything. Because affairs can be rejected. Rumors can be brushed off. But a child? That's irreversible. That's something that lingers long after the headlines die.
Wow.
You know what I mean? A lot of fear. A lot of fear that my wife wouldn't understand if I told her the issues and problems I was having. Because when me and Tina started dating, she didn't know that much about me. I hid that part from her because I knew if she knew.
And as she spoke, the cracks in her composure became impossible to ignore. Her voice shifted, her breathing changed, her pauses got longer. Not because she didn't know what to say, but because saying it out loud made it real. People watching began reacting instantly. Some refused to believe it, some started connecting dots, others stayed silent, waiting for something more concrete. And then she mentioned DNA. Not casually, not as a theory, but as confirmation. And that's when the conversation moved from shock to division. Because once DNA enters the narrative, everything becomes heavier. It introduces certainty. It removes doubt. It forces people to choose what they believe. And the internet did exactly that. Half of the audience began defending. The other half started questioning everything they thought they knew about this family. But beneath all of that noise, there was something more important happening.
Firm believer that charity begins at home and then it spreads. And then I forgot that part. And so I contributed to the distance in our...
Tina wasn't just exposing them. She was exposing her own reality. Because every word she spoke wasn't just about what they did. It was about what she had lived through without knowing. Every memory she had, every moment she trusted, every time she stood beside them, now had a different meaning. And that realization doesn't just hurt. It destabilizes. Because when your past changes like that, your present doesn't feel real anymore either. That's why her breakdown didn't feel sudden. It felt inevitable, like something that had been building long before this live ever started. And as the stream continued, it became clear that this wasn't the end of what she had to say. It was the beginning of something much bigger. Because when someone reaches the point where they stop protecting the people who hurt them, there's usually more waiting behind that first reveal. And if what she showed was only the first piece, then whatever comes next isn't just going to be emotional. It's going to be irreversible.
Found out about it when we were taping the show.
The moment the report was shown, the narrative stopped being controlled. It started spiraling. Because once Tina Campbell put that document on screen, the conversation shifted from speculation to something far more unstable: interpretation. People weren't just watching anymore. They were analyzing, zooming in, replaying, pausing on frames, trying to read between the lines of something that wasn't fully explained but felt too heavy to ignore. And that's where the situation became dangerous. Because the more people looked, the more questions surfaced. If this was real, how long had it been happening? If this was true, who else knew? And if this had been hidden successfully until now, what else was still hidden? That's when the tone of Alive began to change again. Tina wasn't just presenting something. She was unraveling. Her words became less structured, her pauses became longer, her emotions started overriding her delivery. And the more she spoke, the clearer it became. This wasn't a controlled exposure. It was a release. A breaking point that had been reached long before the camera ever turned on. Because now, she wasn't just talking about what she found. She was talking about what it meant. The years she had invested, the version of her life she believed in, the reality she thought she was building alongside Teddy Campbell. All of it suddenly questioned. All of it reinterpreted through the lens of what she was now claiming. And then she introduced another layer. Not louder, not clearer, just enough to push the situation further into uncertainty. She suggested that what she had uncovered might not even be the full story. That there were still pieces missing. That what looked like betrayal could actually be something more structured, something more intentional. The idea of a hidden arrangement, a relationship that wasn't just secret, but possibly established in ways she hadn't fully confirmed yet. And that implication changed everything.
I was. The fact that I've been a contentious wife the entire time I've been married to him, I'm sitting up here running around being the...
Because now, this wasn't just about a moment of betrayal. It was about the possibility of something ongoing, something organized, something that required effort to maintain. And once that idea entered the conversation, it didn't leave. It expanded. People started revisiting old footage, past interviews, moments that once seemed ordinary, looking for signs, looking for anything that could explain how something this significant could exist without being noticed. And in the middle of all of that, another name began to surface more prominently: Warren Campbell. Because if the claims being made were even partially accurate, then this wasn't just one relationship affected. It was two. And the possibility of that second collapse added another level of weight to everything unfolding. Because now the damage wasn't contained.
I got love. I don't need the other kind of love. I'm fine, at least for a little while. You know what I mean? Because I got her. You know what I mean? And so he was just...
next month.
It was spreading. Across relationships, across families, across a public image that had been carefully built over years. And yet, there was still no response. No confirmation. No denial. Attempt to address what was now being discussed across every platform. And that silence began to take on its own meaning. Not as proof, not as defense, but as space. Space for interpretation, space for speculation, space for the narrative to grow beyond what was originally said. Because when a story like this isn't immediately challenged, it evolves. And the longer it remains unanswered, the more permanent it starts to feel. That's why the live didn't just create a moment. It created momentum, a shift in perception that couldn't easily be reversed. Because even if every detail isn't confirmed, the image has already changed. And once that happens, the original version of the story no longer exists. Only what people believe replaced it. And right now, what people believe is still forming, still moving, still building towards something that doesn't look like it's going to settle anytime soon.
The person who it was, she used to work for me, and so that broke my heart. She was like a godmother to my children.
By the time the live ended, the damage wasn't contained to a single moment. It had already spread. Across timelines, across relationships, across every version of the story people thought they understood. Because what Tina Campbell did in those minutes wasn't just emotional. It was strategic. Not in the sense of planning every word, but in choosing the moment when silence no longer served her. And that decision changed the balance completely. Before that night, everything existed in fragments, rumors, whispers, inconsistencies that could be ignored or explained away. After that night, there was a focal point. A single event people could return to, replay, analyze, and question from every angle. And that's what turned this from a private collapse into a public unraveling. Because once the audience has something to hold on to, something visual, something specific, the narrative becomes harder to control. And that's exactly what happened. Clips began circulating immediately. Sections of the live were cut, reposted, slowed down, enhanced. People weren't just reacting anymore. They were building timelines, trying to map out how something this significant could exist without being exposed earlier. And in doing that, they started connecting dots that may or may not have ever been connected before. Old appearances were revisited, conversations were reinterpreted, expressions that once meant nothing suddenly carried weight. Every detail became potential evidence. And that's when the situation moved into a phase that no one involved could easily stop. Because once the internet starts reconstructing a story, it doesn't rely on what's confirmed. It relies on what feels consistent. And right now, the pieces people are putting together feel convincing enough to keep the conversation alive.
And he was like, Tina wants to know, and da-da-da-da-da. And I said, are you sleeping with my husband? And she hung.
Meanwhile, the silence from Teddy Campbell and Erica Campbell hasn't slowed anything down. If anything, it's intensified it. Because in situations like this, a lack of response doesn't pause the narrative. It expands it. Every hour without a statement creates more room for interpretation, more space for assumptions, more momentum for a version of events that may not yet be fully understood, but is already being accepted by parts of the audience. And that silence doesn't just affect them. It affects everyone connected to them, including Warren Campbell, because his position in this situation isn't neutral. If the claims being made hold any weight, then he becomes part of secondary impact, another person forced to process a reality that may not have been visible to him before. And that possibility alone adds another layer of tension, because now this isn't just about exposure. It's about consequence. Not just emotional consequences, but structural ones.
Up the phone, so I had my answer. So it broke my heart. I destroyed 3 cars. I cut up and crashed up and tried to stab and plotted murders and all kind of crazy stuff because I was angry.
Relationships shifting, trust dissolving, decisions being made in real time without clarity. And at the center of all of it, Tina. Not as a performer, not as a public figure, but as someone who's already crossed the point of holding back. Because once you reveal something this personal, this disruptive, this irreversible, there's no return to privacy, only progression. And progression in a situation like this doesn't move slowly. It accelerates, especially when the person at the center has already suggested that there's more. More information, more context, more pieces that haven't been shown yet. That's what keeps the story unstable. Not just what has already been said, but what might still be coming. Because if the first reveal was enough to shift perception this dramatically, then anything that follows has the potential to redefine it completely. And that's where the uncertainty becomes the most powerful element of all. Not knowing what's next. Not knowing what's confirmed. Not knowing which parts are incomplete. Just knowing that something significant has already changed. And that whatever comes after this won't just clarify the situation. It will reshape it. Because once a story reaches this level of exposure, it stops being about what happened and starts being about what people believe happened. And belief, once formed at this scale, is almost impossible to reverse. And just when it seems like every boundary has already been shattered, it hasn't. Because what pushes this into even more dangerous territory isn't only what's already been revealed. It's what hasn't been revealed yet. Insiders are now suggesting that Tina Campbell didn't press go live just to respond. She went live to initiate something. A calculated rollout. A first move. And if that holds any truth, then everything we've seen so far might just be the opening layer. Because step back for a second. A document is displayed, accusations are made, identities are exposed, yet there's still no full story, no detailed timeline, no complete breakdown of events. That kind of quiet. It doesn't end a situation. It expands it. At the same time, the silence from Teddy Campbell and Erica Campbell is beginning to reshape the entire narrative in ways no official response ever could. Because now, the audience isn't waiting to be told what's true. They're deciding for themselves. And once the public starts connecting dots on its own, control disappears from the people at the center of it. It turns into something larger, something unpredictable, something that can't be contained. So now everything comes down to one question. What happens next? Does more proof surface? Do they finally break their silence? Or does this evolve into a slow, very public collapse where each new revelation hits harder than the one before? Because if even part of what's been shown is accurate, then this isn't about managing a situation anymore. This is the aftermath. And the reality is, aftermath doesn't fade quietly. It spreads.